Mahi ahi Mārie, and welcome to the City Delivery Committee meeting of Monday the 15th of December. In terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit. The assembly point is down Devonport Road. Please be aware this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Can I ask my colleagues please to remember to speak clearly. Please turn your phones to silent and please remember to turn off your microphone when you've finished speaking. That's actually normally a Mahe problem because he's used to having his on all the time. So I'm going to open today with a karakia. Tū taua mai runga, tū taua mai raro, tū taua mai roto, tū taua mai waho. Kia toau, te mori tū, te mori ora, ki te katoa. Humi e, hui e, tae ki e. And that is calling for energy and guidance from within, above, below, and from the environment. It's intended to invoke unity and the importance of being bound together to move forward together and providing a sense of community and connection. And just on that note, just a thought to those at Bondi for the awful events that happened there last night. So we've got our Mea Mahe as an apology today. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Rolleston, Councillor Morris. All those in favour? That is carried, thank you. So we are now going to open the public forum and we've got Danielle and Stephen Rundell up first, if you'd like to come up to take a seat. We have an odd system here where red means go, so you just need to click on your button and when it's red you will be, the microphone is on. Is that on? Yes, that's better. Yes. And you will see the 5-minute speaker, the timer up on here. So please, welcome.
Kia ora. So me and my husband are here today to speak. I have written a letter because I'm not a public speaker. So my name's Danny Rundle and this is my husband and we own 9 Harrier Street. We're here today to talk about the subsidence at number 7 and number 9 Harrier Street. We genuinely believed until recently that this council was prepared to act in good faith in addressing the debilitating land issues we are living with at number. When we bought the property in 2020, the council's property file confirmed that the former instability issues at number 9 had been rectified and signed off by council. There was no warning and certainly no indication that we were buying into a situation where the land beneath our home had been built on a 10-metre deep waterway and is sinking. In fact, one of the documents available has a 50-year guarantee. It's fair and reasonable when purchasing a property to have faith and trust that council has done their due diligence, and the drainage from Yatton Park was also overlooked. This is in our submitted report that we previously submitted. When we met with Barbara Dempsey, we were optimistic. Her attitude was professional, respectful, and left us with the genuine impression that we were entering into a good faith process with council. But that hope was short-lived. At the on-site meeting with council staff, even before they had inspected our house, we were told that we'd probably have to get a lawyer and that we probably wouldn't have a claim. That was the tone set before any facts were gathered. In the same conversation, we discussed council's insurance claim lodgement. Council staff confirmed that this issue had already been referred to council's insurers. With respect, you don't notify your insurer unless there's a possibility of liability. Otherwise, what would be the reason? If there is truly no risk or no case to answer, then referring it to your insurer would be misleading or worse, fraudulent. You cannot have it both ways. If you're telling the public one thing, that council has no responsibility, while behind closed doors you're notifying insurers that that's not transparency, that's damage control. We're not looking for a fight, we are looking for accountability. And if the council believes it can just wait us out, wear us down and ignore us, because we won't hire lawyers, then that says everything about the state of public leadership in this city. We've been more than reasonable. We've done the work, we've presented the strong and executive evidence, ironically using council files. We've asked for a pathway to resolution. The door was virtually closed by the Chief Executive's comment in his response to our report, where he states there would be little scope for change to his decision. Well, the law is not about scope, it's about responsibility. Councillors, you are here to represent us against the council staff pushback as they clearly want to bury this issue. So today I'm asking this council to stop hiding behind silence, insurance referrals and polite dismissals and start treating this issue and our families with the respect and urgency we deserve. We're asking council to acquire our properties for a fair and reasonable price because they're unsellable. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Danny or Stephen? Thank you very much for taking the time. You spoke really well, so thank you very much for that. And and now Robin and Warren Densler. Say that again for me. Densler, sorry. Okay. Thank you, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin, and with my husband Warren, we represent our family, the Dazzlers, at 7 Harrier Street. In August, I led the submission a detailed evidence-based report that took months of research to prepare. I sent you all copies. I trust you have all had a chance to look at the big filled hole our homes were built over. To date, we've received no response from the Mayor, who asked to be kept in the loop, a disappointing formal letter from the Chief Executive, a letter that slammed the door shut while also claiming it was still open to discussion, so we're just wondering which is it. Mayor Drysdale often talked about moving forward. I wanted to ask him and all elected members, would you be able to move forward if your home was sinking as a result of years of council failures? We would dearly love to move forward, but we're stuck with an unsaleable sinking property in a flood zone. I worked for this organisation for 10 years and I always felt that things were fair and people were heard. So here we are. If council has already decided it bears no responsibility and there's little scope to change that position, what does open to discussion actually mean? It feels like a tactic to delay, to discourage, to exhaust people like us, but we're not going away. We're speaking up because the law is still on our side and because this is about basic decency and accountability. Marty, in his letter to us, kept reiterating that it's not fair on the rest of the ratepayers for council to come to the rescue, so to speak. That statement is offensive. Surely this is an insurance matter. It certainly isn't our responsibility to rectify council mistakes. If council can buy 2 private homes at the end of Rosedale Drive to make room for a future road, surely it can consider acquiring our 2 properties, which sit on an unsafe, unstable land and are directly in the path of a historic waterway, like other properties council has purchased when land has subsided. We feel as a health and safety issue for Yatton Park, our sections would make an excellent car park or safe public space for Yatton Park visitors as it gets very congested and dangerous on the street now. There's kids coming and going from that park, and you can't see them with all the cars parked either side of the road, so a car park would be ideal. Elected members have an obligation to free us from this situation. Why should we, the victims of this poorly developed land, carry the burden and risk for situations where councils have been negligent? Our houses are cracking and will soon crumble. We're seniors now, we have no appetite for lawyers, and in reality, council working in good faith, we should not need them. What we need is courage from our elected representatives, and we need leadership. We need a resolution. Our properties are now worthless. You have the power to make this right, and we appeal to you to please don't let this be another matter that drags on for years because no one wants to take responsibility and blows into a huge cost to ratepayers and funding a fight. Let's work together to make this right. We're not asking for special treatment, we're asking for fair treatment. You already know what the right thing is, please do it. Our report is very thorough and cannot be challenged because it's based on facts, mostly from the council's own documents. Even without legal representation, we know our rights under the law. If council staff are hoping we'll get into a legal battle, this would be for you, our elected representatives, to intervene. Mayor Drysdale, councillors, you were put here by the ratepayers, for the ratepayers, and now these ratepayers are asking for your help. Please right this disastrous wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin and Warren. Any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks for coming in, and I know how hard it is to come in here, and obviously this is an emotional issue for you guys, so appreciate the bravery of coming in here. I think it was mentioned earlier on by Danielle about the unsaleability of your properties. So have you had them on the market? Has it been something you've tried?
It's not legal to even build on a waterway, so how are you going to sell a property which no one can build on again? How can you do that? It's a waterway. Water's still flowing there. It's got all the water from all the infill housing going under it. It's still got all the water from the surface level going into the ground from Yatton Park. There is no drainage put in from Yatton Park when it was put in. It's the same situation, and that's why it's crumbling, of course. It's getting washed out from underneath, because if you look at the report, they didn't even take the black dirt out. They just filled it with black dirt, then clay or whatever you call it on top of that, and that's why we've got. So now, after years of having people, like 2 homes built in, or one 10 years ago, and one a bit longer than that, and all their water goes in to this area. And there's only one way it can go. It's where it's gone for thousands of years. So how is it saleable? That's what a question I ask.
Sorry, it's just a second question. I went for a bit of a wander around the street there this morning, and just looking at the drains, there's some relatively new stormwater drains outside your house. How have they been put in recently?
Yes, after I first talked to drainage at council, they admitted that there was a drainage problem, because in the winter in the past, all the leaves from those oak trees across the road fill up the road, and the little drain that was there, and of course then it all just comes down our driveway and floods. So they admitted that they were making it 3 times bigger, but that is only taking the street water. It doesn't take, if you looked, I don't know if you walked into Yatton Park, but there's 3 big soak holes go down, which take the surface water into the ground under our properties. They go nowhere else. They're not connected to the council's drainage at all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and bringing that to our attention again, and we will respond where we can. Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Are we going to suggest an action in terms of a response to the submitters? Like, are we going to review the situation?
Our legal team has certainly already looked at it, and they have had a response from the CEO. If you want to suggest that it goes further? Councillor Taylor.
Can I propose that Councillor Kurik and myself perhaps review the letter from the petitioners and then maybe have a chat with the CEO just to see what might happen from there?
That sounds like a great suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Kurak. Item number 4, acceptance of late items. There are no late items. There is no confidential business to be transferred into the open. There is no change to the order of business. So we'll go to 7.1 on page... whatever page I've got here, 12. And we're looking at confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting. Has anyone got any issues with what was minuted for Tuesday the 4th of November? That being the case, can I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes, please? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Schuler. No comment. All those in favour and against? That is carried as a confirmation of those minutes. Thank you. I will now ask for if there are any declarations of conflict of interest for the items on the agenda today, and record that there were none given. So we'll move to 9, the business, page 27. So we are looking at the status update of actions from prior City Delivery Committee meetings. We have in front of us a table of all of the actions with the status. Our normal process is that we check to make sure there's no errors, but also we do check that the closed items that we're comfortable as closed. Do we have any questions on the status report? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just posing a question. I notice the submission from Mr. Scott around the community boards, and we're going to be looking at things through a representation review later, but it triggered within me a thought about how we deal with status updates. So as things remain pending, an update might be this is coming to the relevant committee in early 2025. And then a few meetings later it says this is coming to the relevant committee at the end of 2025 and then the end of 2026. So I'm wondering how we keep a track of the change of without adding another column, how we keep a track or remain cognizant of the change of those actions if they've been delayed on an ongoing basis and the reason why.
Would you be happy to have track changes in the work plan? So the track changes wouldn't include the new items because it obviously says the date, but we could have track changes or just in red where they are significantly changed rather than trying to track them.
Yeah, that would make sense to me, but I just highlighted it.
Would that be workable?
I think we'll have to check with the people who control the documents. But if I'm correct, Councillor Morris, the issue is that some of the actions are there for a while, and it's the duration. Is that right? That they're there for a while?
No, not necessarily the duration, because sometimes there is a reason, like a representation review, why the duration is there. But just highlighting to the committee or the other committees and the council why something is there for such a long time. Well, not necessarily why, but the changes so that we know that it is there. Because I think for this particular item it was the community committee.
Yeah.
And then of course change names and iterations, and I think that date has shifted a couple of times. I looked into that one in particular, but looking at the document, there may be others there that have shifted in timelines in the pending column, but I'm just not as cognizant of it. So something to highlight that something has been delayed. There may be reasons for it, absolutely.
If it's all right with the chair, what we'd like to do is take an action to sort of taking into account Councillor Morris's the behind the reason why something's there and having the rationale alongside the action, especially as it runs over time. And if track changes we might bring back a couple of options to the chair.
It might even be that at the beginning you just note that
I think so.
these three have been pushed out a little bit.
Yeah, and
that might be
keeping
that might be
context alive.
yeah.
Yep.
That might be as good. I had a couple of questions on, and they're not numbered, are they? So on November 2025, 9.1, the annual resident survey, communicating the reset. I'm not sure we did communicate it particularly clearly. We talked about 106 positions being taken out, but it's not all that clear in the annual report that where those positions are. I think it's actually not till next annual report, by which time we might have forgotten. I'm also cognizant that we had a slide from finance that talked about there being ongoing savings from the reset for 25, 26 and 26, 27, which have not yet, well, I'm not sure what they are. So I would like that to not be closed, and I would like to have a look through. I'm comfortable to sit with staff and go through the communications that were made publicly about the reset and make sure that we are clear that we are putting the right information out and giving public enough information. And if somebody would like to join me in that conversation, I'd be happy to have volunteers. Councillor Morris, thank you very much. So that's a change to that action, if we may, please. So we're just going to, the closed action, we're saying we're not going to close that one, and we will, Councillor Morris and Deputy Mayor Schooler will talk with staff about the actual communications about the reset and whether they're clear enough. There's also a conversation on page 29 about it's hard because my notes don't say what number, because we haven't got a number on them. The feasibility study from Caris at 69 and 99 Spring Street. Did we actually get a copy of that, or could we get a copy of that, please? So the closed item, we need to get a copy of that feasibility, please. And on the public forum with Deborah Turner, so page 33, last item, it talks about a not ideal recommendation, but I just want to make sure that Ms Turner, who came and presented on this, that the loop's been closed, so that she has been informed about that. And I 100% concur that if you haven't got a non-safe bus stop around the hot pools, suggesting that the answer is to change buses at Bay Fair and get a different bus really isn't a great answer. So I'm going to unclose that item because I think we need to figure out whether that's sensible or not. And I'm still going. Oh, you're going to interrupt me and then I'll come back?
Sorry, just on that particular one. I know that has been brought to the Transport Committees at Regional Council, so potentially Deb presented to both of us, and I know it's probably more within their remit to be able to change those things. No?
Right, okay.
Oh, Councillor.
Through the chair, I think the issue is it sort of went through staff back to TCC, is my understanding, and then because we do the bus stops, so therefore it's back in our ball court, our balls in our court. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless we take the rerouting to Bay Fair option.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Crowther. And just, we did also have a closed action on executive summaries, and we are, I think it's still in progress. So I'd just like to change the status to in progress, please. And if anyone wants to talk about it, let me know. Councillor Crowther.
I'm just wondering if we can find out where the list on the very first item, which is the resident survey, where it talks about align with the Mayor and Council's strategic objectives, and then it lists things like civic pride, beautiful city, etc. Now, we've had various lists of, so we have the council list of priorities, we have our council elected members list of priorities, which I think are very similar, but this one seems like another list yet again. I'm just wondering if, I don't think Christine is here, but if whoever can speak to that, where that list came from.
You're right, Christine isn't here to confirm. I wonder though, that because the lists have moved, it perhaps was an older list, and we can get you the original source of where that one came from, if that would help.
Yeah, I mean, or just to make sure it's aligned is probably the main action point, but certainly to maybe next time just put what the list should be and so forth, because I noticed it was just a month ago, so it just seems to have come out of the blue, that list. I've got nothing against any of those things, but it's not the list.
Thanks for raising that. I did see that as well. So, no further questions or discussion. We have a mover in Councillor Kurak and a seconder in Councillor Crowther for the resolution that's about to go up on the board, please. Because I can't find mine. So, receives the report status update on actions from prior City Delivery Committee meetings. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alistair. So now we have the City Operations Year in Review 2024-25, and we've got Greg Steele presenting for us. Welcome, Greg. Yes, please. And I will say it was nice to be able to verify some of what you've talked about in your report when I was out at the Coronation Park with Greg and the team last week.
Cool.
All yours.
Oh, thank you for having me today. Appreciate the opportunity to come and review our year and to answer any questions and talk you through. This presentation gives a little bit more detail on a couple of things, a couple of the community feedback items to the report. I try not to just duplicate what was in the report. It also gives a little bit of an update of some of the new contracts that have come in and what we're seeing from those contracts. Starting off, how we align to the TCC strategy, which is the document that I've got pictured up there for the list of priorities, and to enhance our environment and the delivery of services for our community. And we do this by maintaining and improving community amenities, creating a skilled workforce that are proud to be working for TCC, and vibrant, well-maintained areas that connect with our communities. We address the key principles of looking after what we've got through high-quality maintenance and doing that maintenance with pride. The accountable and transparency. We actively address CCMs or community queries and compliments and complaints, and seek community feedback to improve. For value for money, a higher level of service for the same projected costs. And for bold and innovative, looking at 1% improvements using technology to support our delivery and engaging with a proud workforce. I've got up there how we roll, and this is the sort of 3 takeaways that I'd be wanted to portray to you. If you take anything away from what City Ops is about, we're about a culture and a people-first attitude, whether that's our community or our workforce. Continuous improvement, getting better every day and learning from our results. Community feedback and the successes, and sometimes it's been the unexpected tasks that we've been doing that we receive the most feedback for, which has been quite interesting. Some of the snapshot highlights for what we've achieved. Our workforce is diverse, and in that snapshot infographic, which showing a wide range of age groups, diversity and female leadership, and keeping quite a lean management structure to our ratio of operators. Our planned work is our priority. I think I talked to you at length last time around maintain, and do it on a routine basis. We've completed over 10,000 work orders and received results of 96% overall quality from the auditing. Our reactive work we've had 72% of our reactive work was self-raised, showing that we're proactively identifying issues and resolving them, trying to do that before the community needs to. Compliments from the previous financial year have increased for spaces and places because we're all sort of mixed together, so I look at that as a total. Have increased by 20 and our complaints reduced by 47. That was number, yep. In terms of compliments, so we've seen our compliments increase. And this is some of that was from staff professionalism, and our gardens and presentations and the walkway maintenance. Our complaints, oh, sorry, I thought I got rid of those. Oh, I don't know how to do that now. Stop, laptop. Our complaints decreased overall, indicating an improved service delivery and response, and also so the gardens, and so our Hort team have done really well, and we've seen a lot of community feedback about the gardens and the well-maintained gardens, so that was a real trend in the feedback there. In terms of areas for improvement, so every complaint is addressed and looked into for those opportunities. The mowing consistency I raised in a report, we didn't nail the mowing through the spring flush last year. We took on the Tauranga contract. We had it on a 3 to 4 week routine. The spring flush hit us and we couldn't accelerate, and parts of the city got out of spec, and that was reflected through our CCMs. I've got a slide coming up on how we've looked to address that for this year. Our road vegetation, probably to Councillor's query through that came in, was previously not on a routine, it was on a as complaint basis, and we've now, with the roadside mowing, been able to align those services together. And we did get a number of CCMs through weather-related events last year, so we saw a bit of not a spike, but quite high levels of trees in our walkways and vegetation type stuff, a bit of drainage and rutting, and those were some of the common themes of the complaints that were coming through. Moving to some health and safety. So over 164 events reported from our field staff and reported on and resolved. We've got a TRIFR score of 6.13, which we believe is within industry benchmarks of 5 to 10, which is looking at the amount of injuries that occur through and a ratio to work hours. There was 56 injuries, 48 of which were minor and first aid type scratches and grazes type injuries. And we've got a strong focus on our training, early intervention through physio, etc. Our SOPs, so standard operating procedures, and that's helped support our injury prevention. A couple of key highlights in miniature riding. We got signed off on our Impact Te Tika pre-qualification. This was redone just recently, and we increased our score from 82 to 85%, which put us up another level. We introduced physical capability testing in our pre-employment medical checks, so full mobility to make sure we're selecting the right peoples and preventing some of those injury issues down the track. It's a physically demanding job. Implemented the monthly drug and alcohol testing. I'm going to claim that we were the first department in council to get on top of it, and it was obviously of importance for us. But that there could be a bit of Greek math on that. We established a City Operations Safety Committee, again, people first, giving our employees a voice in another avenue to take some accountability of their safety and how SOPs are rolled out, what's developed and the like. We delivered 60 compliance and operational training courses attended by 264 staff. So we're still pushing through our workforce development. And then we've got 27 staff currently undertaking, and we handed out a whole lot of certificates on Friday for a New Zealand Certificate in Primary Industries, and that's government funded too, and that adds to the 56 staff that have already been certified since 2023. Our people achievements, 23% of our staff participated in other development programs. So we've got things like there's a few leadership programs that our staff go on to that are TCC wide to communicate powerfully. We've had 92% complete. I'm pretty sure we're around 100 now on the Wired Up in colours, and I know you guys have done that. It's landed really well in the field, and it's created a lot of conversations around, geez, I didn't realise you were a yellow, or here comes a red walking down, and things like that. So it's definitely brought the TCC language into the workforce and helped a few teams work together. 100% pass rate on our 90-day onboarding. So our induction, we put a big focus on, geez, you can only take in so much in the first 4 hours of your first day. And we have a set routine for 90 days with check-ins, and that ensures that we're setting the employees up for success. And so that's worked really well this year. We had a mental health first aid training initiated with 9 staff. We've got regular culture building activities, including leadership sessions, toolbox talks, barbecue, sports nights. All good? Jeez, I've bored you that quick. And I had a good stat in there, but I've lost it. And our staff engagement, you can see that we put in a whole lot of posts onto our chat group, and there's a lot of engagement from the field staff. They're putting up photos of their great work, the view from their work, or shout out to people with their birthdays and stuff. So it's definitely developed a really cool culture to be a part of.
Sorry, Greg.
You're all good? Do you want me to recap what you missed? Because it was good.
I listened intently.
Oh, give me some time. I'll make it up. We did a Keep New Zealand Beautiful. City Ops went out for an afternoon, and we picked up 2.1 tonnes of rubbish from our reserve reserves, and so that was something that the teams were proud of. It was raining heavily, and it was really cool to see. And it's the stuff that they've seen deep in the bushes, or so they knew where to find it. And there was a little bit of a side competition for them to see who get the most tonnage. But it's pretty cool to see that sort of side of things. Touching on our service delivery and mowing, yeah, like I said, we didn't nail it, and part of being transparent is owning where you had some issues that we saw it, we felt it from the community. Looking at last year, which is, I don't know, can you see the cursor? Oh, you can. So November last year, we were up at around 60 complaints or CCMs from the community about mowing and our reserves. We weren't in spec. It's pretty consistent, although higher to previous years as well. This year, we're proud we've got the city into a 2-week cycle, so all of our reserve mowing from a 3 to 4 week as normal. We've accelerated it to 2 weeks. We've taken, the way we've done it is we're mowing more. We've got the mowers actively out there, and we're supporting with a few weed eaters. So we've only increased the staff temporarily by 3, but we adjusted our runs. We've pushed more onto our supervisors and accelerated to get in front of it. And with a bit of lack of rain and some heat in the ground should burn off, and will be good for the rest of summer, touch wood. But it was pretty pleasing to see a new plan that was initiated, and fingers crossed it's still sort of working through, and obviously we're seeing it through the lack of community response. Just touching on some of the new contracts that we've brought out since June and July this year. So our sports fields, they have had feedback around the NPC that the domains never look better, which is really, this was quite a high profile, high risk contract to take on, and we're really proud with the way it is, and the core of the difference is the mowing with love. They already know they're turfies. They will talk your ear off about the grass, but without being asked, they cut on different directions, and they do just that. It's just that little bit extra that they do within the same amount of time that is really cool. We've added a bit of technology, a robot line marker, and for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was sending them photos from my son's rugby match of some wiggly lines. They're now all straight. We got an extra line marker to be able to just do all of the fields. We trialled different colours on some different fields out at Gordon Spratt, because there's multiple sports, and you got touch and athletics and cricket, and so they all do that sort of engagement with the sports clubs. And from the Active Reserves Forum recently, the team do what they say they will, and we can't ask for more than that. So I think that sort of says it all. In terms of amenity cleaning and taking on the public toilets, and you get judged, the city gets judged by its public toilet, and our city gets judged from the cruise ships that come in. And so I added that quote in there, and this is from one of the people that chased after our toilet cleaner and pulled them aside and just said to them, this is the eighth year on this cruise, and I've never seen a toilet this clean before. So that team is a proud workforce. It's the same operators that were working for the contractor, and we said to one of the staff, so what is that difference? And that's his quote there: "Here I feel respected." Roadside mowing. This is where we didn't expect. Edging was where a lot of compliments come from, but that's why I put those photos up there. That's some of the activities that the community, whether they knew they were missing it, but they definitely, now that they've seen it, really expect. You got some safety stuff on the top right where that needs to be done, and we've implemented a high-profile mowing run for the Cameron Road and Mount through the spring flush. We've aligned our roadside vegetation team within the roadside mowing team and the traffic management, able to utilise, I'll say, idle hands in terms of the traffic management resource to jump on a weed eater and take down some vegetation while we're in there, while we've got things set up. So there's a real efficiency there. I've got, which I've covered up with a photo, in terms of traffic management, we now have 2 people watching 4 people work instead of 4 people watching 2 people work.
Probably 5 minutes, Greg, please.
Yeah, okay. I'll stop with my jokes. I've only got a couple more. Our renewals team, who are highly skilled, and they're the ones that did Durham Street just up the road. They've also done a whole lot of public toilet upgrades, which have been great, and they've definitely been a real value to have. We've got a community coordinator who has set up a whole framework for the community to be able to assist us and be engaged in the maintenance. So since the 1st of August, the community's completed 778 work hours. And this isn't additional work, this is work that we would have had to go and do. So this is a real great piece, and it's awesome to be able to receive a complaint and then talk to the complainee or the community and give them an opportunity to take action as well. Into the financial review, we've delivered significant increase of level of service for the similar pricing or similar result, despite the one-off setup costs and high allocations of overheads. The in-house model was on par with the projection for the equivalent contracted model. Using the revised allocation methodology for this year's allocations would have resulted in a saving of 1.13 million last year. This demonstrates strong financial governance and validates the internal delivery model is value for money. And that's me, under 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schuler, then Councillor Morris.
Thank you very much there. It looks like you're edging towards excellence, aren't you? That's wonderful. Or did I just say something? Hey, look, just on a more serious note, though, you talked about, and this is a key one, around the mowing of the roadsides and areas and footpaths, but I had Sue Hodgkinson. I'm not sure whether she's a Mountie or an Arataki, and she spends a lot of time walking around, takes great care and does a lot of clean-up, like Mountie. And what's the situation with land in the city? Because, like you said, you know, people will view us, and at the end of the day, it's all on us, whether the land isn't necessarily ours or not. And there was a pocket of land in by the Bayfair, next to the overpath, that's railway land. It hadn't been mowed for a long, long time. It's got gorse, it was growing. What is the safeguards that we can have to either work with other entities or take over and invoice them or whatever? Like, what's the process to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and that, the whole city's looking the same as the level that you're doing on the land that's ours? Are there any safeguards that we can make sure we cover everything?
Everything other than the rail is workable. Rail is hard. It's hard to work in that rail corridor, and we have got qualifications. We do get paid by the NZ Rail to do some graffiti removal. We've done a little bit of work. We've definitely been growing on that relationship in the last 12 months. I can't speak to that exact example, but yeah, rail's hard, NZTA's second.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greg, just in regard to the trimming of the
The edging.
the trimming of the allocations this year. I was reflecting on last year's numbers, and I was thinking, why would they be that high? Was it just simply a case of city operations is now a department of significance within Tauranga City, that you've got all the overhead of the organisation, which has just been divided up, you know, amongst the FTE or the size of the activity. And so I'm wondering how much of those allocations are realistic and attributable to the activity, so that we're trying to compare apples with a contractor model. Because I know with large organisations and different budgets, you just go, you know, X percent of IT, X percent of other managerial costs, X percent of this and that is your allocation. So can you explain how the allocation works in regard to city ops and why it was trimmed, and how can I sort of be of comfort that we're hitting it right and comparing apples with apples?
Yeah, I probably can't delve right into the full allocations and how that operates. It's not it's not in my purview. But in terms of why it was trimmed between last year to this year, it was partly because we were having a robust conversations ourselves. We reviewed the way that it was set up, and they had triggered most or all our operator resources with a full laptop type setup, and it applied the dollars in that way, whereas they only have a phone or some have a phone and a laptop. And so that was the reason of the reduction from one year to the next year. And that was sort of what we were trying to highlight, that. Yeah, so yes, there is an element of overheads that we, and it's mainly in around that IT and phones and phone bills and stuff like that. I don't have any exact number of what that is on a direct cost, but that would be the comparison.
Supplementary, yes.
Supplementary, Madam Chair, maybe an action, if I may, just around some further clarity on the shift in overhead allocations between this financial year and last, and how we can compare a contractor and the allocations that they would allocate up the chain with city ops, so that we're comparing apples with apples.
Did you get that?
I have so much sympathy for you, Anahira, trying to decipher what it was I just said succinctly, but you got it, eh? Yeah, choice.
So, to provide further detail on the allocations to city ops and how they compare with a contract model, which might be difficult, but we can at least get the first thing. Certainly, yeah. Yeah, correct.
The second bit, a market comparison, is a bit harder to get at. Would we have an understanding from previous contract rates and itemisation?
If you're happy to rely on historical contracts and what we have in terms of their overhead allocation, which isn't always clearly defined.
Yeah, I think would just help provide a bit of clarity, but I'm open to others.
Alistair, certainly.
One of the other options we could explore is one of the original creators was a Christchurch council that spun off their business. Their CCO records, as well as the Rotorua one, I think Infracore, who did their flowers, they're both public domain CCOs. While they're once removed, it'd be interesting to see what their public records hold. Unless a contract's open book, you may not get that margin versus allocation distinction, but the task is the task.
Thank you. Councillor Baker was next.
Thank you. I have one question and 4 supplementaries. No, one question and 2 supplementaries, if that's okay. Love what you guys do and how responsive you've been, especially with some of the influx of requests that I've received. Funny how topical and how precious, I say that respectfully, our people get about how well our city looks. Something I've been pondering, and I'm not too sure if you guys have thought about it and what you do, but Tauranga City Council currently has a curbside rubbish collection app, which is just tells people what bin picks up, what bin is being picked up according to their suburb or address. Perhaps to save future CCMs around when's this place getting mowed, is the team working with our digital team, is the leadership working with our digital team to develop an app or become another function of an existing app that provides that level of detail for residents so they can find out when their suburb's getting mowed and clipped and trimmed, etc. That's my first question.
So we're not actively working with IT on that solution, but we are working with a new dispatching app that has customer portal capabilities, so it could be explored through that, if that answers your question.
Kind of. I'm sure we've got capability in-house, perhaps consider an internal job before creating a completely new app or new function, etc. First supplementary question, do we have any kind of cultural considerations when it comes to some of the maintenance work that we do, particularly with native plants and trees? Do we connect with any hapu and marae that may want to repurpose those for cultural reasons? Do we have any kind of frameworks in place for that kind of mahi?
We don't. I don't believe we do for City Ops, but I imagine no. It doesn't appear that we have an official avenue in that way.
Might be something to work on. I know that I've had sporadic, and they're rare occasions, but they obviously do arise enough that it might be good to put something around it so we're not getting rid of some of these precious materials or taonga in our normal BAU, but we can repurpose them in a meaningful way. Not an urgent job, but something to consider. And my final supplementary question...
I'm just going to speak to that, because when I talked to the horticulture team at Coronation Park, they were very aware of what is growing, what grows well. They work really well. They know that natives are definitely preferable. And so there's definitely a lot of work saying what we need to grow the things that grow well here, which often will be natives. So whether that's taking it far enough for you, but it's definitely understanding that if something's growing well, we will preserve it because we want it there.
Yeah, probably a little bit more to the fact that there was one particular example in Johnson Reserve, a native tree had fallen, and the request was responded to really quickly, but the tree was just treated like a normal tree, and perhaps there was an opportunity to approach a marae or a hapu or someone to take that and reuse it for something. Okay. So it's more like when, because Manuka grows 30 years, it's like there's end-of-life stuff that we could just repurpose, that type of mahi. And now, yes, supplementary, yep.
Just in response to what you're talking about right now as well, we did have another situation where there was a big old historic tree directly outside the current Tauranga District Court, and apparently there was a contractor via Tauranga City Council who reached out to us to find out who the tangata whenua, who the iwi rep would be, because he wanted to go through a proper process to ensure that, to firstly ask if it was appropriate to remove that tree, and subsequently if they wanted to do something with the tree. So I think there's some mechanisms in place. It's just, I think, maybe joining up the dots if there's no consistency around that process.
Cool. Thank you, Jackie.
My final supplementary, if that's okay. So the moment of truth. Did anyone get that? Damn, it wasn't as good as Kev's, eh? All right, I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Nope. Which part of the city, or where are you receiving the most CCMs?
No, I'm going to have to come back to you, but I reckon I could tell you in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Now we've got Councillor Roseboom, then Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Crowther.
Thanks, Chair. Greg, well done. I compliment you on your work and throughout the year. When we first got elected, I got a lot of comments on the public about bits of ground not being mowed all through the lakes and other big vested developments. There was a disconnect between what the developer was vesting, what information was coming back to council. Has that stopped now? Have you reckon you've identified every piece of land that's actually council land that you are responsible for? Because have you actually identified them all, or are you still getting comments about bits that aren't being mowed that are actually council and not private land?
I think it has dramatically reduced because we're not finding as many CCMs where we're going in and going, oh, man, that's not it. It's not on our contract. Who owns it? And there's normally some complicated bit of story of why it's not there. But we don't think there's, it's pretty rare at the moment in terms of that. That doesn't answer your vested assets that are coming in the future question. But we think what we have now, if it's not getting attended to, it's about waist high. So we should be able to see it soon.
Yeah, because my follow-up to that is, how do we ensure that in future that we actually clearly identify what the developer's actually vesting back to the city, what's private homeowner and what's actually public that we have to actually tend to, because that affects our costs, obviously. And if a new block comes up or a new small, even if it's only 10 metres square, someone still has to go and mow it. So how are we going to track that? How do we get the developers to actually tell us what they're actually vesting back as a public asset?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the beauties of the reset or some of the realignment, having the waters, the infrastructure and space and places all within the same department. I was in a meeting last week where Alison and Wally and Mike were talking around this same sort of issue. So I think that strategic alignment is going to result in a better understanding of what's coming.
Councillor Taylor.
A couple of quickies. You mentioned in there that you'd been audited. Is that internal or is that someone from outside?
Currently, we're still reporting on what our asset management team are auditing. So that's exactly the same as what the contractors were auditing too. We have started and we've ramped up a lot of our own internal auditing through our compliance team. We haven't transitioned the data over in that way. We're self-auditing more than we're getting external audited. With the plan that our self-auditing becomes over and above and higher level.
Okay, thanks. And can you just explain a little bit about mental health first aid?
I didn't attend it, but it was more a targeted training course to skill and whether there's a qualification, but effectively the people that attended were trained on how to recognise how to immediately attend to and what are the triggers and how to deal with that in a mental health specific way. And it's definitely, we had to limit there was only 7 that attended. There was about 29 to 30 that wanted to go along. It's front in mind to our resources, and so it's a bit of a skill set to be able to recognise and manage mental health within the workforce. Very, yeah.
Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. You seem to have a great team culture, and I'm really impressed by. I went for a walk in Sherwood Street in Automoto one Sunday. I thought I've got to get in touch with the council and try and get a bit of trees so that were encroaching on the footpath. I thought I'd better do that tomorrow. And before I had a chance to do it, you'd gone out there, so you're obviously very in sync with my thoughts. But that wasn't what I was going to. Yeah. No, but it is
Be
great
careful
to
what
see
you
that
wish
stuff.
for.
Yeah. Yeah, what else could I want? What I do want is I'm interested in whether you have a target around agrochemical use, but we've got a couple of farmers here, so urban chemical use. And thinking of our Tauranga Taurikura environmental area, and I noticed the volumes from another report I got that the volume of agrochemical use had increased in 2024, and we haven't got the figures for 25. But is that something you're aware of? Is that something you have targets around?
So we feed into the overall TCC policy on agrochemicals and the target to reduce the agrochemical use. We, I think, provided additional information to that report you received. The way the data was collected isn't very easy to see the volumes, so there were some big outliers that were throwing that data out. In terms of the count of entries, we could show reduction overall. We have put our every agrochemical, you do a spray diary, so we've got that through an electronic app so that we've got a better understanding and we can report better on our agrochemical use. And then there's this, I'm going to leave that, there's a fine line between cost of maintaining our city, which contradicts to the value for money conversation, and so
yeah,
substantially.
I think that's a good point. I must say I was walking along Elizabeth Street one morning last week and I saw the signage there, and I'm thinking there is definitely more signage put out, which I think is quite good. But I have had a number of, I guess you'd say, complaints from people around what appears to be more chemical usage, but might just be that you're notifying people more as well. My other question was around the financials, and I pulled up the very similar looking comparative financials for the previous year that we got last November, and I think there might be a mistake there, unless I'm getting a bit, my brain's too full from all our reading in the last couple of days, but we talk about bringing the 23-24 costs through to 24-25, but we use like the same CPI figure for the same time frame in both years, and I presume it should be a 2.7% rather than a 3.3% CPI. So if whoever needs to look into that can do that. But if that is the case, it means there is another $80,000 which you'd have to add on to get a comparison between the contracting cost and the and doing it in-house. Now, I'm not trying to compare the two in terms of the benefits and the outcomes, but to me it looks like we're not just talking 272,000, we're talking about 352,000 sort of worse off from bringing it in-house if you take the allocations into account, to Councillor Morris's previous point. So I think it'd be good to tidy that up and maybe report back to us with what that figure should be, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't the same inflation rate 2 years in a row.
So I think I too had some problems reconciling the wording in the report and the table and what we got from Barbara in November 2024. So can we have an action, please, that we provide a spreadsheet with the costs for 23-24 and onwards to include draft 26-27, including the numbers that we got that was reported to this committee in November 2024, please, including allocations, and headcount as well would be good, please. But we also, there were some specific, like we had contracts we were paying for, and we eventually bought them all in-house. So this table should tell us what we used to contract and what it now costs us. I think we're doing a lot better job, and I'm comfortable with that decision, but I just think that the costings let me down a little bit in terms of, I talked about a 1.3 million improvement and 2.07 million, and if that's the case, we should see those when we get the annual plan from Marty. It should say that this would have been the annual plan, but we've saved this 2 million from bringing city ops in, and I'm pretty sure we're not seeing those sort of size numbers. So it would be good to get that clarified. The other couple of comments I just want to make, because I think you talked about the alignment, Greg, and I really liked when you talked about, or one of your staff talked about, the fact that with the making our city look nice and being prepared for events, you talked about whether there was bulb planting in Greerton to go with the Blossom Festival, which I thought was a great concept, and I thought you just talked about better alignment between the team that's actually choosing the trees that we do plant. And I think you also talked about when a transport project happens and because I talked about a couple of the projects on my way home, that there's a whole lot of planting that happens as the roads are completed, and sometimes they don't seem to be the sensible plants that are there, but then they're vested to us. So did you just want to make a comment on what you're thinking of in that response, or have I formalised something that was just you chewing the fat? Sorry if I have.
Sometimes I get myself in a little bit of trouble.
If it's just a good idea that I took, then let's just leave it at that, if you don't want to comment.
Yeah, I mean, my comment would be that there is decisions that we're able to influence, and we're working with Spaces and Places closely, who have eyes up on the future, and we're working with the other departments around, geez, what do some of these gardens cost to maintain that are within the road corridor versus the aesthetic benefit, and whether that cost is, which I think was to your point. So now that we have a greater understanding of where those cost points are, we're able to influence the decision makers on where they should and shouldn't be, and we're attending some of those sessions. So we're actively feeding that information back.
Yeah. Thank you, and sorry. Councillor Rolleston. Oh. No, I think I've brought something to the fore that I probably shouldn't have, so I'll leave it at that. Greg's answered it very well. Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good report. Really good to see all the mahi that's been done, and obviously leading the team forward. So congratulations, and for someone out like everybody out in the community seen some of the work. I don't know if it was a coincidence that someone mowed the berms in Marapihi on the weekend where all the cars park during the week to come across the bridge, which creates another challenge because they can't mow it during the week. So, I think, and I did want to congratulate you, because a month ago I think I said to the guy, when can you do it? And he said, when aren't they there? And I said, only on the weekends. And he said, I'll do it. So that can do it attitude. Probably, I don't think I would have got that response. And I wasn't flashing a council badge. I was just talking to him as a member of Marapihi. So well done. My question is, I noticed you've got about 43 vacancies. Am I reading right there? In your structure, 43. You got new roles 11, so you're bringing over 11, and you got in ours I think it's 40, page 43, 42, in your structure, or is it because that's an old structure?
Yeah, it would have been right on the 1st of July sort of scenario.
Yeah. So what is your vacancies? Are you holding vacancies? I guess it's just a general question then on, and how are you finding these people? What does it look like to bring over, or are you finding that you're mainly bringing over the existing employees from those that you're integrating?
We've only had 2 contracts where we've primarily taken the incumbent contractor. That was the amenity cleaning and the roadside mowing. Otherwise, it was probably around 20-30% from the existing contractor. It was around, we advertise it different. It's just through SEEK, but what we offer as a council was an ability or an opportunity to work in your community and have work-life balance, to be proud of what you do, and that has created a team and a workforce that aren't necessarily money-driven, so to speak, but their cups are filled by what they do every day. And I think that's a slight difference in the workforce and the quality of work that they're putting out. To answer your question, how many vacancies, I'm not sure 100% what we have right now, but our struggle in vacancies is in the traffic management area, partly because we're an open, partly because it's a difficult industry to get qualified workers for what we are offering at the moment, but we want to bring up our internal resources and train them and do it our way. If that. So one of the ways we engage, so we do SEEK. We, Councillor Baker, we attended last week. I can't remember what it was called, but we went there and represented the council there and had a chat to some of the young fellas that were looking for a job, and but it's normally sort of word of mouth and through the standard advertising mechanisms.
So just to add to that quickly, then, you know, we talk about partnerships, and you mentioned about, you know, your team, community people want to make a difference, opportunity, if it's not to have some relationships with iwi, because you'll find exactly the same local people wanting to make a positive difference in the community. So, you know, something to think about as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. I think the amount of comments and questions from the team suggests how important or how highly we value the work you and your team do. So congratulations on that edging towards excellence in this moment of time. Yeah, please take that back to the team, and I think please keep up the great work, and it is very much a part of what our people do see when they are around this beautiful city, and you're helping to enhance that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and appreciate your guys' support and effort throughout the year. Cheers.
Kia ora. So we do have a recommendation to receive the report City Operations Year in Review 24-25, which Councillor Baker is happy to move and Councillor Rolleston happy to second. Any further discussion? Excellent. All those in favour? I strimmed your question, sorry. You all right to not make a comment, or would you like? Okay, so we are moving on to 9.3 Aspen Reserve Upgrade Option, and we're welcoming Emily and Anna. So we will take the report as read, but please add anything you want us to particularly note.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora.
Lovely to be here again. Yes, so Emily and I back on Aspen Reserve, strike three. So just a quick rehash, we brought this matter to Council in April. We presented a couple of options. The report was left to lie on the table, and we were asked to set up a workshop to go through some options. So we had the workshop, I think, in late August. We presented 4 or 5 different options. We got some direction to proceed with 2 of those, and we've gone away, again, worked up 2 options, and those are presented in this report. Option 1 is the more expensive option, which included timber deck that could be accessed off the street and some lighting, and there was some interest in that at the workshop that we had. And option 2 is the more simple footpath with a bit of furniture. Both options provide some landscaping. Emily, unless you've got anything to add, happy to take questions.
I'm probably, because I'm sitting in the normal mayor's seat, just in terms of the costings for that, are you comfortable that you have whichever option that the costings are sensible costings? Have you looked at the scope of what you're doing and you have questioned whether these are coming out with the right numbers per square metre of land area that's being beautified?
Yeah, that's right. We've done that. So first we estimated square meterage and things like that. We talked to the different project managers around recent costs for projects that they've been doing recently, and we used those square metre rates. And
That's
then
what worries me, because we're finding that they're actually a little bit over the top.
And then we asked City Ops to also provide a price, and they did that as well.
So can you tell me how many square metres is in the park, please, in the reserve?
Oh, the total size of the reserve? I'm
Yeah,
not
we
sure
tend to ask, particularly from this seat, not when I'm normally in it, but what the square metre cost is for the renovation to anything.
Oh, we've got a square metre rate for concrete. We've got a square metre rate for things like.
Yeah, but for the whole reserve?
I do not have that price.
We haven't worked out that price, and we can go away and do that. I think I would just add that this is still very much concept stage, so the request to move to the next stage with a preferred option would allow us to test these costs further. We can then bring back a per square metre rate cost for the upgrade as a whole.
Councillor Schuler, can you leave us to have a conversation?
If that would suit at that point. I think we're still needing to get to the point where we have a project in order to make that next stage of costings.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Crowther. No, sorry.
Sorry, I mentioned briefly in there is the historic wall. I hardly call it a wall, it's about yay high, I think. Do we know what's going to happen to that in either of these 2 options? And sorry, have we found out how historic it actually is?
We haven't done any further work on the wall in terms of understanding how historic it is. We had that information with the understanding that it was used for tying up horses, and it was built at around the same time as the road and the courthouse. The work that is proposed to be done to the wall is basically tidying up the sections where it's fallen down. The focus has more been on the wall on the inside of the reserve, which is not the historic wall. The wall that is along the road, which is the historic one, there is a section that has fallen down in front of the Pohutukawa. That won't be able to be reinstated because the roots are just pushing the wall over. But we have retained most of the length of that wall. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, probably just making sure that it is actually something significant that we're doing there, and it's not just, we're doing it because someone murmured about it, but so whether the team can find out.
Yeah, I guess I would just add the research that we have done includes the historic photos that are in our collection, which clearly shows the wall on that Willow Street edge. We've determined, though, that the wall on the inside face of the park is a circa 1970s, so still old enough, probably, but certainly not that kind of original edge wall that we're talking about. The 2 options do treat the wall slightly differently, but there is still limitations to how much we can protect of that very much historic wall due to the movements of the Pohutukawa roots.
Cool. Second question. Obviously, there's a major thing going on across the road with the courthouse. Has any thought been given to just pausing until they actually get going, because I think there's going to be a major interaction between this green space and what happens in front of a courthouse. If you look up on Cameron Road, there's often people camped out in the front of there and doing various different things. Have we considered that?
I think that's part of the decision that you can make today. So it's whether you want to be responsive, ready for that new growth to occur, or whether you would prefer to wait until we see exactly how that building operates and interfaces with Willow Street. I guess from staff's perspective, we certainly want to make our city ready. We like to make sure we can get in and do the work prior to new people and more people entering this part of the city, to make sure that we're ready for that growth, I guess. I'd hate to see a situation where the park isn't improved or made safe enough for new groups to be interfacing or interacting with it. But it's certainly an option that can be on the table. Pause now and wait till that development occurs.
Okay, so your opinion is sooner rather than later?
That's what I would support. I also think that we know how much we heard about the impact of disruption on the city centre through the City Centre Streets engagement. So where we can get in ahead of a development completing, or at the same time when there's hoardings already on the street, perhaps that is the right time to get in once, get in done, and then leave that part of the city for it to be enjoyed.
Councillor Schuler, then Councillor Morris, and then Councillor Baker.
Oh, another highly interested topic. Thanks, guys, for the report. And really, I think you've captured really well what's probably gone on through the workshops and some of the initial pushback from the original paper, I think, that came to us. So well done on that, and they both look really good for what is potentially in front of us. I suppose the first question is, I don't recall, just to get a picture of the changes that have been made. Do you recall what the original costs were? There were several options, and I'm sort of thinking of 500 and even up to 850 or something. Do you have those numbers? That's my first question. For recall, to see where we've got to.
Don't have those numbers on me, sorry, but you're right. The first option was like around 500, and the second option was around 800.
And then the second question, if I may, Chair, is the two different options, and some of the previous ones had sort of the ability to layer stuff and do stuff over time, but as I look at these, it's an either-or option in front of us now. So option 2 is an option, and option 1 is the higher spec. So there's not really a do 2 and then that'll morph later if we want to spend money later. It's an either-or choice?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's my two questions. Thank you very much. That'll help my debate.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, and I'm pleased, all in all, that we're keeping most of the bricks in the wall, which is great. In terms of the options, option 1 offers a better interface with the neighbouring property to activate that and provide the passive surveillance. Can you explain what that means in terms of the difference between option 1 and 2? What's the how is that passive surveillance aspect less in option 2?
It's probably more, I think in the report it talked about both activation and passive surveillance. So at the moment, the staff lunch room is basically at the level of the reserve, and then they have kind of a porch area that goes from their staff lunchroom into a porch area, and there's a balustrade of their porch area that is between the reserve and the building. And so my colleague spoke to the owner of that building, and they are interested in doing something and providing some connection. That's something that they would be doing at their cost if they wish to do that, but they were interested in that idea. Option 1 provides some concrete, there's some concrete steps and things, so that if the building owner decided to improve that connection, they would remove a couple of glass panels along that balustrade, they would add a step, and then they would be directly onto a concrete surface, and it all ties in. If you select option 2 today, if they wanted to do that, the levels would be as they currently are, so there wouldn't be a flat area to step onto, and then if they did step onto it, they'd be stepping onto grass.
Councillor Baker.
Tēnā korua. I also want to acknowledge your guys' time and effort and the team behind you. And it's been a long journey, starting back in April. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge the effort and time you guys have taken to get to this point, because it has been massive. So I'm curious around point 7 on the next steps, which include working with mana whenua around cultural expressions, and then we've got applied to the Public Art Fund. Are those dependent, or is the cultural expression that we're talking about there dependent on a successful application with the Public Art Fund? And no, two separate things. So what would be the need for the Public Art Fund application?
At the workshop in August, we identified some of the different types of things that could happen, and one of the things that was discussed was a mural on the wall. And at the workshop, this council said that the mural would not be budgeted for out of this project, but that we should apply to the Public Art Fund for the mural. We have met with mana whenua. We talked about the different possibilities for representation and interpretation of cultural values. We did talk about the mural as one of those, but also said that the decision had been made that that would be subject to a Public Art Fund process rather than done as part of the project. We do have a little hiccup, which is that the Public Art Fund, under that policy, council projects need to be over $50,000, and we did not, when we were coming up with a cost estimate for the mural, that's currently under $50,000. So we've got a couple of ideas about how to get around that, but we haven't taken any further steps in that regard. We're waiting for the outcomes of this meeting.
And supplementary, if that's okay. So we may have thrown you guys under the bus a bit there then, but has council ever applied to its own fund for things, and how do we scrutinise ourselves more for the sake of transparency and fairness to the community when applying to that fund?
I can only speak to my own experience of participating as a staff in the process. I don't manage the Public Art Fund, so I put that up front, I guess. I certainly know, though, that the Public Art Framework and the policy anticipates and expects council projects to be applied. And part of this came where significant public infrastructure was being delivered without taking that next step to actually create a place from the infrastructure being created, for example, Cameron Road. So the whole setup of the Public Art Fund was on the basis that council projects would be supported in that way. I also think that puts into the spotlight why it's really important to have an external panel making those decisions on what projects to fund and also how much funding goes into those projects.
Tangata Whenua Representative Jackie Rolleston-Steed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You pretty much channeled everything that I was thinking about, Councillor Baker, and had kind of preempted some of that conversation. I definitely kind of know that we did talk about, so I think we talked about what those options, because originally there was 3 options that were provided when you came to us, and yeah, one was kind of at that high end of $500,000, and then there was option 2, which was, still a bit up there, and then option 3 was do nothing. One of the conversations that came out of the workshop as well around that mural was, okay, in lieu of a budget, and we were concerned about not losing some of that cultural IP, looking at the 2 options that will be retained anyway, and there has been, a bit of engagement done with the 3 hapu, as of 2017, and I'm just so I feel like that's not going to be lost. You've embedded that into both of your options now, which is great. And I think the recommendation was we were concerned that we wouldn't get a mural because we couldn't factor it into that budget. So if we were able to ensure that we could access that budget, my only question or comment would be exactly what you mentioned around the transparency of that, because of its perception of council kind of looking at some of their current projects and where that would be translated. And I'd be cognizant of the fact that you weren't, it is under 50, if it was under 50,000, you're right, you'd probably need to bundle it into other bits and pieces. But yeah, that transparency would be important because you've still got other members of the public who would be wanting to vie for that public art fund as well. So I think that's kind of where we ended up in the mural space, and if I've got that correct.
So just to, oh, sorry, you're going to...
Yes.
I saw the nod and I thought, I'll just check. Okay. I'm just going to ask a question and then Councillor Rolleston. Just on point 27, please, you talk about delivering between 200 and 350,000 would allow the remaining budget to be spent on other green spaces. Can you expand on what budget is left and what other green spaces we might spend that on, please?
Sure thing. Yes, so we have a City Centre Green Spaces budget, which seeks to deliver projects included within our City Centre Action and Investment Plan. We had, through that plan, had anticipated a much higher cost being associated with Aspen, so there certainly is budget left over if you were to make a decision between 200 and 350k. So this year's budget is about 1.4 million. Generally, each year of the long-term plan, it sits about 1 million, just due to some prioritisation that happened last year. Some more budget was added into this year. I can outline exactly how that all happened if you need the detail. In terms of what projects are coming up, we have a list of projects, I guess, that come in and, above and below the line as we look at priorities. And that's made via decisions with staff, and then obviously we can bring the projects to you. The most recent project we're looking at is the edge and interface improvements around the domains. So we know we've got some renewal budget for fencing, replacing fencing, and we think it's a good opportunity to take the time to reassess, is the fence exactly in the right place? What do we do with the planting around it? Can we improve the tree pits on Cameron Road and formalise the car parking to kind of improve that key gateway into the city? So that's the project we have in planning and design stage at the moment to spend the rest of or look at further spend this year on this budget.
So sorry, we previously of the 1.4, we're going to spend 500, 800 potentially on Aspen. So you're going to move another 500,000 to the domain. Is that what you're...
We're just making those, we're just putting the project together at the moment and making that assessment on whether it's a key project to move forward with. But certainly because the scope of Aspen has changed, and so we've been able to look at a broader program of works for the domain. So that includes the replacement of the cypress trees, for example, along the Hamilton Street edge, which would be a higher cost than just replacing the fencing.
And so I think if we are reallocating 500,000, it would be good to bring it back here unless people would object to that. A few nods around the table. Okay. And the other, my other question, just in terms of what's happening at Te Manawataki, in terms of what the design looks like, the wood you use on the seats, is that you tie all that in, and also with what they're planning at Justice, because they probably have some plans in place? Question, Mark?
That's a good question. So one of the first projects we kicked off as part of the City Centre Action Investment Plan was a public realm design guidelines, so just for that point. Yep. So try and get some consistency across planting, material finishes, and other design elements. So yes, we've got cohesion in mind.
Is that sort of thing, because that's what people quite like to see, is that the sort of, those guidelines, would they be public? Would they be able to be shared? It's just, people do talk about what's happening design-wise. It's always nice to be able to say, there's the guide that we utilise.
We can certainly look at making that public.
Great. Okay, thank you. Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you very much. I've got, if you may, a couple of quick questions. Probably a little bit related to Councillor Taylor's around the courthouse. And I think at the last meeting I talked around down the bottom where the old waka is in the Tauranga Moana Trust Board. So I guess the question is around neighbours. I think the easiest part of the first question, have we tried to get any money out of the courthouse, given they're spending 206 million, and this is going to be an amenity value in particular to them? I think we had tried, hadn't we?
We've certainly spoken to the court about what they would like to see at an upgrade of Aspen. We haven't yet followed up with them on that question around seeking any funding. Their interest was car parking. Thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest we
Oh,
still.
no.
Wouldn't you think that if you were building a $206 million building and there was a nice reserve going next to you, that you'd see some value in it? I'm just more making the point there. So my other question, it might be for you, Renika. I think you, originally when the Deputy Mayor asked the question around the cost, and you said that City Ops had been doing some quotes. Did I hear that? Can City Ops do most of this work, do you think?
I've had that conversation with them about their ability to undertake the work. We talked about the two areas that they probably, other than lighting, the two areas that they would have less confidence in doing. One was if we use decorative concrete, and by that I mean any concrete that's not just brush it. So adding an oxide, if there was going to be any finish to expose some of the ag, that's not something that they would be able to do. Sorry, there's three things. Repairing the rock wall, the 1970s part of the rock wall, they would need to get someone in to do that. We have some hesitancy about the timber decking. We would be wanting something that was aesthetically pleasing when you're thinking about how you lay out the timber, for example, versus something you chuck up in your backyard. And the person I spoke to in City Ops were very confident that they would be able to to do a decking of that quality. We'd like to ask, what other places have they done, and just check in on that.
Could I supplementary to that? How do we do that in this, I guess, in the new way that we now have ops in us and we want to get value for money? However, we want to also be transparent. So I guess this is probably a question of process. I can hear we need to make sure we've got the right people doing the job, but I guess I'm saying if they're our people, and then we're certainly going to be cutting the margin and being very transparent. So I guess I know today we're talking around a particular reserve, but it may be a very interesting test for us as we go into this new. I don't know if Renika or Alistair want any comment on that.
That's good. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you for just adding my voice to the others who've, I think you've sort of hit it really right with this. I'm interested in, there's always, flexibility when you have two options. You say, what about a bit of this and a bit of that? But in particular, I'm thinking the opening up of the end nearest the city centre through the concrete path. I'm a little bit more nervous in terms of the spend around the timber decking, because particularly I haven't seen the answers yet to some public questions around what the costs of some other timber decking projects around the city have been, and seating and so forth. So, and also the maintenance costs and all that. But to open up that extra bit of concrete path and connect it through would give accessibility at both ends, would link it right through on a hard surface if it was a wet spell in the middle of winter. And presumably if you've got the concreter out there sort of doing the job, I wouldn't have thought it would cost much more. Is that something you looked at when you sort of divvied up what was in option one, what was in option two?
Sorry, can you clarify what your question is? What did we look at?
Well, if you look on the plans, which are on page 60 and, well, the ones I'm looking at, 60 and 61, that the concrete which comes, well, and there's images there which seem to show concrete coming down at the very bottom there, on the bottom left. So that on the one you have a concrete access, on the other you don't open it up for access. It looks presumably just like a bit of garden there. So could you not put the concrete path through those extra few metres and connect it up without doing the decking, which would be a lot more expensive, I would have thought.
I see. I understand now. Sorry about that, Councillor Crowther. We could. In option 1, part of the existing stone-walled garden is removed, and the deck is basically built in front of the stone wall. So where we're identifying areas of the stone wall that need to be repaired, there is less of that in option 1 because we're effectively putting the deck structure in front of the wall. In option 2, because we're not putting any deck, it means that there is a longer length of stone wall that needs repair. If we were to do what you've said and put in the concrete path and not and keep the stone wall, it would mean some rework of the stone wall that goes around. So when you look at option 2, you can see there's a funny lumpy bit of stone wall that's kind of like a B, and then there's another wedge. So it would be, we'd remove that wedge, you'd get your concrete path in, but then you'd be having to finish that stone wall because it's falling apart.
In terms of the, through the chair, in terms of the cost difference, would that be, because I'm looking at what's in one option, what's not in the other, is a significant cost for that then things like the lighting? Is that, because I would have thought it would have been those other things, but is it sort of the lighting that would make quite a big difference in the costing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The lighting and the deck each would sort of in the order of 30,000-40,000 each.
Okay, that being the finish of the questions, thank you very much for the detail shared. So there is, we have got 2 options that have been presented to us. We've got a mover from Councillor Schuler to receive the report and approve option 1. We've got a seconder, Councillor Roseboom. Any discussion on the motions? Councillor Schuler?
No, I'm very happy, but if there is, I'm happy.
My question is in terms of bringing back to this committee the options for the remaining budget, can we put that as a C in the resolution? Would you be comfortable?
So accept as is and add in?
Yeah, just C to say, brings back to this committee the options for the remaining budget. Because we've got $500,000 that we might have from the remaining budget. We just would come back to this committee.
And some of, okay. You guys happy with the, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. Chair.
Or it's being added to the domain budget. What does that look like when it's added to there?
Well, we would find out when it's brought back to here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it might just happen and we don't know about it. And it is part of the report. Councillor Morris.
Happy to speak to this, Madam Chair. I can recall when the Aston, that's a bit bougie. That's a bit bougie.
I'm going for Asplin.
Michael Asplin, that's getting back to the 70s. I'm going back to the Aspen Reserve discussion that Councillor Kurak will remember back in 2018, when an $800,000 budget was provided for a solution that looks somewhat inferior compared to option 1, which is on the table today at 350 or less. And I want to acknowledge our team for taking up the challenge that was set at this table. This is representing far better value for money than when we were discussing it earlier around this council table last April, and a couple of councils ago back in 2018.
Yep.
So really impressed that that our team have taken the challenge, and as a result, I think I've got to accept option 1 here.
That's right. Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Corralda.
Yeah, happy to support option 1. I think it's great to be able to retain the wall, the old part especially, maybe, I don't know, 1970s part, I'll reserve judgment on, have another look at it all. But I think it's a good balance. It's great value for money by the looks of it, and I think for me to have that extra accessibility in the long run will pay off. I would just urge caution around sort of the pricing of those wood elements there around the decking and so on, because I think it would be good to get the most cost-effective option there. I think the rest of it you've probably got your heads around fully, but that I just get a bit nervous after seeing some of the other costs that I've seen since being on council. So if we could really focus on that part in particular, I think we could even get a better outcome potentially.
Councillor Rolleston, then Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, endorse option 1 and acknowledge the mahi that's been done to get us there. But if we can get any more, improve it, even better. I wouldn't give up on the Ministry of Justice and what we might be able to get out of them. I think I heard we'd sort of had discussions, but let's not close that door. And I think what we can do under City Ops, again, that would again provide value for money. I think option 1 as it lies is good, but if we can improve it in any way by offsetting some of that cost. And I know quality is important, but it could be a bit of a collab between some of our City Ops and contractors. But very happy to be supporting this resolution, option 1.
Councillor Baker.
I don't know what I ate today, but I'm probably not on the same waka as everybody else is at the moment. In respect of the kaupapa, I do support the sentiments of Councillor Morris and the staff input and what they've done to get us to this point. But I'm just still struggling with investing in this reserve at this point in time. And if this was to not go ahead, which it's sounding like it will, then I would like to foreshadow an amendment that we allow option 1 to lie until the court development is finished and we understand the movements of people and behaviours and activities before we invest. However, in speaking to kind of why I'm not supportive of going ahead with the project at this point in time, we voted a particular way on Blinken chip seal versus asphalt last week, which many could argue that stumping up for asphalt roads for these particular communities or for communities in general would provide, would have a far greater reach and a greater level of support and outcomes for people versus a reserve that is heavily underutilised. And there's no real strong evidence to suggest that with these upgrades there will be a massive draw of people. So I struggle to accept any kind of level of investment at this point in time when there's no handout strong evidence to suggest that the investment would kind of have that social return. On top of some of the recent decisions we've made and the rationale behind it, it almost seems like a bit of a, and I'm trying to be cautious of what I say because I'm not going to get ousted on social media or become the reason for clickbait for our council, but it seems like a bit of a slap in the face in many respects to support this at this point in time. But should it go ahead, I do wish it all the best, the project, and I do again sincerely thank the staff for all their work in getting it to this point.
So just would you like to add that addition to the substantive? No, I just wondered if we could put it as could be part of the substantive if the mover and seconder were happy with that?
No, I think...
Happy with that, okay.
I'm happy to leave it as is, and if that fails, then the council...
I also feel that from a cost perspective, it's a reserve I use because I used to work nearby, but I was generally the only one in it. And recently there hadn't been more people in it, perhaps when it's nicer, that might attract a few more people. So I understand your sentiment, Councillor Baker. Any other comments? Councillor Taylor?
Acknowledge everybody's thoughts. I think it's been a good round around the table. I do think there's something here with the Ministry of Justice that we should be at least talking to them about potentially a bit of a cost share, because the people that are going to use this are obviously going to be those that are using the courthouse in the very near future. So I'm not probably quite as adamant about waiting till the courthouse is finished before we start this project. I think Emily's point about getting it ready before it's needed is probably valid, but I think we probably need to communicate with the project people at Ministry of Justice just to see what we can do there.
Tangata Whenua Representative Jackie Rolleston-Steed.
Yeah, I tautoko what Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rolleston said too around being able to leverage opportunity around what MOJ are currently doing. I know that one of the previous conversations that we have had at the workshop was around what data could be made available from MOJ around what that demographic looked like, because that's how we were making association to some of the cultural narrative that would be associated to that park, to that reserve as well. So whether or not there was that action kind of came to fruition, I'm not too sure. But I also want to acknowledge the team who've been working on these options. They must think that we're overcooking it a little bit, but appreciate that there is, some budget constraints associated to it. But I do want to acknowledge the team that's been doing all of this hard mahi. I know you've been working on this for 7-8 years, so kia ora.
Do you want to finish, Councillor Schuler?
I'll just ask, does Councillor Roseman wish to speak? Did you reserve your right before? Yeah, you go first and I'll finish.
I'd just like to support the staff for the work they've done on this. I'd caution against using in-house facilities for this. Our city ops team is charged with looking after footpaths and edging and grounds and stuff. To add capacity to them for this, how would we utilise that capacity going forward? If they don't have ongoing work for including that capacity in their team, what's the point of adding it for a one-off job? So I'd caution against that in this case, but no, I definitely support option one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, from my point of view, I had written a few notes down and I thought I would be having to do a great persuasive speech, but it feels like there's a general amount of support. I suppose just a bit of some feedback from my view. This is a key part of the overall city centre development as I see it, and to leave it empty or not tendered or not upgraded, I think would be a big mistake on our part. And fully acknowledging some of those choices we made last week, I don't think it's the same. It's the same case, and I do really want to thank the staff, because if you look at what we've been here for, what we say we want to deliver for the city, and we want to do it value for money. And this is a really good example where they've hit it out of the park, and the renders of what's in front of us are really good. I would have been disappointed if someone had gone for 2, because I think for the extra $150,000 that you get way more than 1.75 times the benefit. Just to talk about the broader context of who should be helping us pay, and I know we love thinking about this, it's not just the Ministry of Justice and the courthouse that are going to be using that. We've already got the panorama towers that are already well on the way, medical facility right there. We've got our own CWM and museum. So this is going to become a real key focal point in that northern end of the city. So to talk about and isolate out one group to try and help us, I think if we do that, we've got to, one, acknowledge part of it's for us, and then also look at some of those other people that might be involved. But really happy with what the staff have done, with where we look like we're going. I think it'll be a great asset for the city, so very happy that to support this.
So we have a recommendation on the screen. Can I ask all of those in favour, please say aye. And raise your hand. And those against? Kurak, Baker. Did you vote, Councillor Crowther? Were you a yes or a no? Yes, sorry. So Kurak and Baker against. So that is carried. And this is a very good time to take a tea break before I get in trouble for working us too hard. Can we come back in 15 minutes, please? 15.
Do you have an appointment at 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
The developers have been
Welcome back to the Delivery Committee of Monday the 15th of December, and we're on 9.4 Transport Miner Safety and Accessibility Project Update, page 70. Welcome Renika and Karen.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you an update on those minor projects. They cover projects that are already in the design phase and or to be delivered this year, or projects that are being designed this year for delivery next year. Those projects have gone through a prioritisation process that was previously agreed by Council in about November of last year. And I know time is precious, so perhaps if you'd like to take the report as read, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen or Renika? Was that a yes, Councillor Crowther? Yes. Councillor Baker. And then Councillor Baker, then Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Baker.
Sorry, just a bit of clarification on point F, which was talking about the signalised crossing at Ngātai Road. In a previous meeting, we had a discussion with the people in Pillars Point and about taking some of that money perhaps and putting a few crossings in. How's that?
Through you, Madam Chair, one of the challenges is for us to come, no, it's not a challenge, it's the process. We need to be coming to Council to say, and that's what the, if we can use savings and reallocate it to other projects. So we're making good progress with the Vale Street project, but how we're going to fund it is still to be determined by the Council, and perhaps we can discuss those options in the next paper around how we prioritise and use savings, possibly.
Councillor Baker.
Tēnā kōrua. So just touching on point B around the safety improvements for Ohauiti Road. Question one is the timeline. You may have semi-answered it through that initial question, but my question was around timeline for that body of work to be commenced. And reading throughout the report, it kind of touches on this is a response to community concerns and people complaining, etc., which are valid. But have we, what do we use? What's the word? Stress, not stress test. Have we married up? Or have we engaged with the community around what we're thinking for these particular interventions to make sure that they are fit for purpose for what the community are saying on the ground?
Through you, Madam Chair, the interventions identified have been agreed within the community group. There was a much longer list of wants and needs and desires to address, which is already an identified safety issue. We're in the process of drawing up a concept of what that would look like and intend to go back to those community representatives to ensure they're comfortable with that we're on track and getting it right. So that's the work underway at present.
I just had a request, please, on point 5. We've apparently approved a project, prioritisation framework at the Project Planning and Monitoring Committee, which no longer exists, so I struggled to find that. Could we just get that framework shared with us again, please?
Yes, we should.
Thank you. I don't think it needs to be an action, does it, Karen? You'll remember to do that? Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Crowther.
Yes, thanks, Karen and Renika. I'm interested in the couple of the projects there, the reference to Maxwell's Road railway crossing, and then talking about the trying to prioritise the Buretta Road one. Can you just sort of outline what broadly you're trying to achieve by both those, and why, given that we've had some recent community feedback on the Maxwell's one, what's the thinking of sort of reprioritising as opposed to maybe moving the other one forward if you want to do it at the same time?
It's a really good question, Councillor Crowther. The challenge, the opportunity exists to get some efficiency in terms of doing the Beretta Railway crossing at the same time, or very close to wrap that in with the Ngāta Parisa intersection. From a community impact process, network transport impact, it also makes sense to do that. In terms of prioritisation, initially Maxwell's Drive was ahead of Beretta, so it's a timing constraint, they're both important. So the opportunity exists is to look at potentially reprioritising Beretta and bring that forward, and then equally an opportunity then exists if Harbour Drive goes forward, for example, in the next LTP, trying to align networks, so there's some synergy.
There being no other questions, thank you very much. There is a recommendation to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Baker. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And those against, that is carried. Oh, look, you're still here. So we'll move to page 77, is it? Yes, let me just get there. So welcome back. 9.5, Transport Minor Safety and Accessibility Prioritisation and Programme Status. Take the report as read, unless you've got any comments to make on it. Any questions on this one? Councillor Baker.
So just quickly, can you provide some clarity on D1, the James Cook Drive near Victoria Street Refuge Island? Does that project also include the moving of bus stops as well, or is that a separate body of work?
Councillor Baker, that's included in the scope, yes.
So I had a question on point 13. We may opt to retain the savings for future use, in which case the identified projects would be prioritised for delivery in 26-27. Are you suggesting that the projects are currently in the draft 26-27 and they would be getting a tick before we approve the whole 26-27 plan?
What we're seeking to achieve is trying to do a bit more with what we've got. So these projects are prioritised in a program as rapidly deployable, or we can deliver them quickly. There is an opportunity to bring some of those projects forward and deliver within existing budgets using the savings in this financial year.
Right. Yeah. So that would take them out of 26-27. Correct. Okay, thank you. Because we have got some options here. So has anyone got any questions on the options that we are being asked to consider? Pardon?
Through the chair, I'm just sort of interested in, like, when it talks about the criteria and the percentage allocation, is that coming from a new assessment, in which case what drove that, or is it coming from the Regional Land Transport Plan, or the what's it called, GPS, the government policy statement on transport, or some other established framework that's being used to determine those percentages?
There's two parts in terms of answering the question. The one is the road safety network assessment. So we use Urban KiriRAP. That's a national model. It's a very macro, high-level model and gives us a really good indication. So it's a well-practiced and well-versed set of information and data that helps inform the prioritisation process. And then there is an exposure demand matrix, which is also a nationally driven best practice approach in terms of trying to gain some attention at a macro level and support demand, access is not only about crashes, but about the potential demand and that exposure. So that's helped informed the weightings and the prioritisation, particularly for safety and accessibility projects.
Through the chair, I guess I'm just interested in like the weighting. We've got 10% weighting around, I guess, community pushback. And my limited but still some experience of dealing with these kind of situations is that often there's almost like a triangle there where you have the safety issue, well, and various demand issues and so forth. Then you have the pushback from the community, which is typically loss of parking, and then you have money. And I guess I just see this weighting as a little bit blunt, and you can probably guess one of the projects we're going to meet about where this is a real live issue right now with parking. But I'm always interested in how much more do you have to spend to be able to maybe address both of those things. And at the moment we're putting 4.5 times the weighting on the safety exposure, and I'm the last person to argue against safety, but I do look at that community pushback, and if there's significant community pushback and if there's good reason for it, it's such a low weighting at 10% that it will be almost automatically ruled out, would be my assessment, unless it's a real margin call on it. And I'm just trying to understand how that comes out when we've had discussions at transport, regional transport committees and so forth, which they're not reflected in this weighting, in my view.
Here's an opportunity to adjust the weightings. The way the scoring process works is that if there's a potential for high demand from a community perspective, and if I may use the example of Marine Parade zebra crossings, we know how important parking is. It's ended up at a priority rating of in the late 50s because of that community. So the weighting is small, the scoring is high, and it flags it up quite early in the process. It enables us still to get a really making sure that we provide councillors and the council with the best opportunity to address a specific issue, be it community demand or safety. But that tension is definitely picked up. But we're open to testing that if the council wishes to do that and increasing it. But we'd bring it to you if it became a real significant. Yeah.
Did you want to say something too?
Further to that, Councillor Crowther, I like that we're talking about the prioritisation parameters. If we could in future agree those so that we can deal with these larger volume of smaller projects efficiently, that would be really helpful. And I believe a workshop to that degree has been requested. So I just wanted to point out that these prioritisation parameters are used specifically for this bundle of rapidly deployable, small, largely safety and community-led projects. They're not universal across transport. And for those smaller projects, the overhead of coming back to council, I think, inhibits the rapid deployment of them. Hence, I love the conversation about the prioritisation parameters and hope we can continue this going forward.
Councillor Taylor.
Just a quick one. Really, really good idea, and I think agree with most of it. Just one concern I'd have is potentially something could stay at the bottom of the list and never rise up. So how do we make sure that something's not there in 10 years' time that should have been dealt with?
I'm going to trust that if it should have been dealt with, it'll rise through the priority ranks. Having said that, if there is a stagnant portion of the list that we eternally keep shuffling backwards, it will be planned for in other years. This is the bucket that we use if we have savings, things we can deliver that we identify from future years that we can bring forward into this year. Does that help?
Yeah, just something to look out for.
But it might be also something that we say that 5% of the fund is able to be used for projects to get them off the list because they've been there a long time, but they probably aren't going to meet this So that's the sort of thing. So is this, so the workshop we might have on priorities, is that different to the prioritisation framework that I'm going to get a copy of, because I couldn't find it from last, or are there a number of ways we're prioritising?
That particular prioritisation process covered a whole range of transport initiatives. This specific prioritisation process is a little minor subset of that to specifically prioritise these little minor safety improvement projects.
Okay, so I guess one of the things that we are, the fact that there was a 1.147 million saving is fantastic, and what we don't want to find is that you do make savings, but there's a process that you then just spend it, so it's not reported that we are bringing items forward. So I think it's something we need to think about as well, how that's reported. I'm very comfortable with C, that we approve those itemised Granada, and then those for the 536. I guess the next thing is, what would we use the rest for? And I'd like to be able to suggest that we trust you, that you know that those are on the list, that they've got some priority and that they're worked through, but maybe they're reported back to us so we know where we're at.
Madam Chair, I think the reason we're asking for that approval, because utilising the entire savings has an impact on rates.
Yeah, I reckon, yeah, realise that, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we've got, so C, we could approve C and D, but then not in principle utilising available capacity, which is E.
Yes.
Can we put the resolution up, because I just need some clarity on.
Yeah, thank you.
So
You're asking clarity about the meaning of E?
Well, no, I'm saying that we've got 1147, but if we bring projects forward, there's an impact on rates because of.
If they go to above a certain level.
Yeah. So if we use the 536 of the 1147, then it's a cost neutral. There's no implication on future rates. If we use the entire 1147, and it's the challenge around depreciation, that depreciation then gets, that then is a cost that results in a $34,000 a year operational cost.
So, sorry, to clarify then, so E is saying that this becomes a sort of an approved process, that the 536 in future years would be allowed to be used because it's cost neutral, or rates neutral. Sorry, I'm not being clear.
What we're asking permission is if there is a situation where it is approved as being cost neutral.
Yeah.
So there's no implication on today or future rates, that in principle the council supports utilising that to progress some of these projects. That said, it's still a process of coming to you to confirm.
So the whole resolution is to spend the 536, not the rest.
That is our recommendation to you.
Okay. E was a little bit unclear for me, so that's fine. Great. Tangata Whenua Representative Jackie Rolleston-Steed.
Thank you. I just got a quick question, I think. It's quick, and it might be sideways, sorry.
Mine was quick too, but it ended up being lost.
It's just around that prioritisation matrix in conjunction with that criteria on safety exposure. You had mentioned, well, the methodology is that it draws on historic crash data, etc. And then I looked at Schedule 2 to think about what might be implemented over the next 3-4 years, however long. Mindful, just because of where I live, of roads that are going to be revoked, so roads of revocation. For example, State Highway 2, being superseded by the Takitimu Northern Link, will then come back to TCC, and that could happen within the next couple of years, right? So with that, is there any legacy as part of that methodology? Is the legacy data or historic data that NZTA would hold, does that get passed on so that it could be implemented as part of your safety exposure priority matrix? And in which case, if it is quite significant, and I could probably vouch that it is, then does that move up the prioritisation? That's maybe a double-barreled conversation, because the priority will probably be undertaken under the workshop. But yeah, that's more of a methodology question. Sorry, that was not a short question.
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chair, makes perfect sense. So through the revocation, we'd be seeking NZTA to mitigate any known risks, and that is around crash data. The answer is yes, we would have that historic crash data. We'd be looking at the moment as part of the revocation. And yes, if it becomes an issue in the future through that prioritisation matrix, it is likely to go up the list. Yeah.
Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you, Chair. I was scanning through the list and trying to see whether there any specific prioritisation from Māori community. I guess my first question, if you can just clarify, so speed humps are outside of this, or are they in this? Speed humps in terms of safety mechanisms, or do they sit in another place?
Yes, so requests for speed humps would be delivered through this program.
Okay, so Councillor Schuler might be able to help me in terms of, we've had a recent meeting with Ngāti Hangaro, and there was a number of safety areas that they were talking around, speed humps and pedestrian crossing. So, you might not know the specifics, but would that mean it hasn't got to the prioritisation or didn't make the prioritisation in this respect? How would we know where that might have where it got to, or is it still in the pipeline? Well, I guess you're, as the Bethlehem Ward Councillor, there's been a number of conversations, I guess, with, I guess when I started my point, I was trying to understand where they were on this list and whether they had got to the prioritisation. I've mentioned Councillor Schuler because he's had different conversations with them, and we went there about a month ago. So I didn't want to have a conversation that said, hang on, it hasn't got quite that far yet, or has it not met the criteria to get on the list, I suppose is where my question is.
So through the chair, and if I may answer, from my understanding, there are safety humps already being placed in and part of the actual works of the current safety improvements that were done last year, that were initially going to the end of the road but are now curving around and actually getting to the marae. And in that, I'm fairly sure that there were safety humps included. I know there's discussion about further down the road, and then that is, from my recall, I could be wrong, a part of a future safety improvements for that road, which also would, factor in the Hangaro community and the Inlet Views community. But I'm pretty sure that those problems have been addressed to the marae area.
I'm just quite sure. I looked at the one that was in the Māori community, and I'm not quite sure whether it's right. It says Waikari Marae, footpath to the Marapi School via Honga Honga Toro Road. So it might be, I'm probably reading it should be Honga Honga Toro, might I? Yes. To the Waikari Marae might be pretty happy if we're going to do a footpath for safety for there to get them to the school, but then they've still got to cross the road. But I probably just a note to probably clarify that one.
We could come back to you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
There being no further questions, thank you, except for Councillor Crowthers.
Can I just check the Arataki bus interchange? Some of the savings have come from that, 1.35 million. Does that mean we've now completed that project? I know it's not the sort of topic here, but it's a good chance to find this out, which is it was a budget for a total of 5.7 million for that, and it was broken into 3 projects for anyone who's followed that closely. So have all of those components now finished, and have we come back with change of 1.35 million? Am I reading this report correctly?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. So, we at the present time delivering the footpath improvements and at the alleyway, which is under the low-cost, low-risk program. But for the Arataki bus interchange and those components, the project's complete, correct.
That's a significant saving on what was originally budgeted, so that's good to see.
Councillor Schuler.
Thanks very much for the report, guys. Just a couple of comments quickly, and there'll be a question in there. So, and it flows on a little bit from the prioritisation. I think you explained very clearly about this as a process to get stuff done quicker, not necessarily doing more for less, but doing more for the same amount effectively, which I think's is the same principle. I suppose the question you've done very well to only put in what you're doing and not have a list of the things you've chosen maybe not to do there, because it could get political around the table, and I see myself and Councillor Schooler and Councillor Baker are lucky recipients of stuff being brought forward, and so we'll take that. I suppose just in the question is around that, and Glenn talked about the ratings. Would there, if for example, active road user demand was 45% and safety exposure was 35%, would there be a material change to that list, or are we at the same level anyway in the bulk, into the mainstream?
We've tested various scenarios. Increased demand, reduce the safety exposure. There is not a material difference. But it's also noting that community feedback is also really important, and if something's escalating or if councillors wish something to be progressed, we look at that as.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen and Renika. We have a resolution on the table that sets a prioritisation. It approves the spend of 536 of 1147 savings on 5 projects. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Taylor was before both of you, so Councillor Taylor, Councillor Schuler. Thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you want to speak to the recommendation or the resolution? Councillor Schuler?
Oh, yeah, I'll just, simply I think it's a good process that's been arrived at, and, pretty thorough background checks to figure out. It's good to know that this is a way that the council can be a bit more agile and can get stuff done quicker. Often we talk in council and, we'll be having some big discussions around the annual plan process about what we don't do and what gets pushed out. And so any little win coming the other way, I think that's a result of getting stuff done on time and under budget that frees us up to do a little bit more in a year and utilise our existing resource and deliver. I think it's a great outcome. So, really happy to support this.
Any further discussion? Okay, we've got a resolution that's been moved and seconded. I'd ask all those in favour, please say aye. And those against, that is carried. So we've got no late items, so we are now going to move into public excluded. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Rolleston, Councillor Roseboom. All those in favour, please say aye, aye. And those against, carried. Thank you. We are now in public excluded. If the buttons could be. Yeah.
Lots coming out of the discussion question. That's helped me.
Good stuff.
But also, I'm thinking that's helped me make